Third-party content has been copied and communicated pursuant to Part 5A or 5B of the Copyright Act, unless indicated otherwise.
Just while we're getting set up here, these events, this is the second BIM event that we've run here at Deakin. We're trying to get more BIM events, and we've got some fantastic sponsors who are allowing us and helping us to do this for free. So we've got Red Stack, AAM, and the B1 Million. So BIM 1 million, this is the newspaper that you guys have got. All right, that's produced in the UK, and it's the very first worldly edition, and hopefully Deakin will be a distributor of that newspaper. So for all the students here, can you just raise your hand so we know what kind of audience we do have? So we've got, yeah, mainly students. But it's so great to see you guys here. I know it's out of your personal time, but it's definitely worthwhile, and I can tell you that from personal experience. If you get involved in BIM and take an interest in building information modelling, you'll really have a step up when you get out into the real big bad world. Does everyone know what BIM is? Everyone understand what it is? We might have some first year students. If you're first year, just pop your hand up. Yeah, excellent. Great place to start. What is it, week 3? Yeah, week 3? Already going.
Week 3 and they talk about BIM?
Yeah.
You've made a difference already.
Done. But yeah, just about myself, for those who don't know me, my name's Charmaine. I work here at Deakin a few days a week, and my role is to implement building information modelling into both construction management and into the architecture courses. It's a bit of a slow process, but Deakin are taking the first step in doing this, and we are making progress. And yeah, with the help of these BIM events and getting awareness about BIM and making people understand that it is the way of the future, it's not just a phase. It's, yeah, definitely Deakin's taking that step forward. If you are, students, I do set up in the research office, so if you ever have any questions about the BIM process itself or the tools that are used within the BIM process, please feel free to knock on my door. If I'm there, I'm only there 2 days a week, but yeah, don't be afraid to come up. So today we've just kicked off. We're going to have a series of 3 kind of topics and 3 speakers. So we've got myself and John speaking about some local projects here in Geelong, both from the architectural point of view and the engineering point of view. We've got Nick and Josh, and they're from Sapphira. Yeah, said it right. And that's a sustainable, I guess you could say, add-in for both SketchUp and Revit to do with sustainable building analysis. And then we've got Matt, who's going to talk about surveying and some point cloud scanning and all sorts of fun things. We might hold questions until the end. We've got some sponsorship for some BIM beers after the event, so we can then mingle and network and talk about BIM, which is kind of nerdy, but that's cool. It's cool. Starting a trend. Yes. When you leave, there's some little balsa wood aeroplanes out on the desk. Feel free to grab them, and we could have a little bit of a competition after the speeches here. So myself, I'm just going to talk about the company that I work for as well as Deakin. It's a small architectural firm called Third Ecology, and we've been Reviting for about 5 years now. I joined Third Ecology 6 weeks ago, and to go into a company that have already established themselves with Revit, which is a tool used in BIM, is a fantastic way to go, and it's fantastic to see that the small companies within Geelong, as well as the bigger companies throughout Melbourne and Australia and the world, are using Revit and the BIM process to create their documentation all the way, or their buildings from conceptual analysis and design through to documentation. So pretty much the Revit design process, as I've dissected it at Third Ecology, is based on Revit, the tool that we use to do our drawings, and where it's really beneficial. And some of the things I'll explain in relation to the Chewell Primary School. A lot of you guys local Geelong people, some from Melbourne as well. We're going to talk about a primary school here that we've done renovation to. So obviously the sketch design within your process, it begins still traditionally with that sketch, with that outline, with that concept, pen and paper. I don't think that will ever go away. But some companies decide, okay, once I've done that sketch design, I'll move it into perhaps AutoCAD or SketchUp or another quick design tool, which is fine. But at Third Ecology, what we do is we go straight into Revit, which is a design tool, and we use from the concept, so using the 3D topo service, so we can actually see the site that we're building on. Shading options, we can place a volume of the building that we're proposing wherever on the site and see how it interferes with the actual built environment around it. And we can run through different design options all through the concept design phase. Then through design development, when was it? Monday, I had an issue with some stairs and a bulkhead, and if I hadn't had different views of this particular part of the building, it probably would have gone unnoticed and gone to site and cost someone a lot of money to fix. But we were able to solve that really quickly through 3D views of this particular area, as well as sections and floor plans and elevations. We then moved to construction documentation, and I find using Revit a very accurate tool, and there's not a lot of double work. So you're not really just doing a model in one program, doing the floor plan in another, and nothing's talking to each other. Revit allows for this design process to flow through really naturally and allows you to not have to go back and redraw things all the time. Of course, it's human error and it's the way the world works. We're going to have to do things twice sometimes, but this tries to eliminate it. And facilities management, that we haven't really experienced because our work is mainly small residential projects, but it's there for the taking. If you're doing, for example, hospitals or universities, that model can then go to the client and used in facilities management. So the project I'm just going to quickly go over and talk about is the Chilwell Primary School. So it was done in 2011. It was one of Third Ecology's first BIM projects. So when I say BIM, it was actually working with John from Wooden Greaves here, who was the engineer on the project, together in this virtual space. And I'll show you about how that helps the process as we go along. So it was 2 levels, it was about 700 metres square, so it wasn't a massive project, but it was somewhere to start in Revit. And it was consisted of, for example, the library, we had a media space, toilets, canteen, and connection to the existing building. And this example here is a really simple floor plan that is not just used in this presentation, it's then recreated and used in construction documentations and things like that. And the little camera, I think most of us who aren't studying architecture or don't have construction knowledge or knowledge of buildings really can struggle to read floor plans. And the ability to use a tool called Revit to see the building from different perspectives and see the different views of what you are actually purchasing as the client is highly beneficial. And if there are people in industry here, don't be afraid to show your clients the 3D model. Don't be afraid to let them see and sit with them and take them through it, because you can create drawings like this. So we've got the little camera of that corridor, and just where what was just 2D was instantly 3D. And you can see here this model is quite detailed. We've got the electrical, we've got the structures, we've got the furniture, everything that you will see in real life. And I think we've got some more real-life demonstrations to show you again today. So why combining models with the architect and the engineer? Why does it help? It prevents conflict. It prevents things that aren't picked up and aren't foreseen in just 2D documentation. And I'll just do a quick run through of how this project did help, I guess, in that aspect. I personally wasn't on the project, but I've kind of dissected both models. So you can see here in the pink we've got the ventilation, which is running through the ceiling, and that's all done in 3D and also can produce 2D documentation as well. And in Revit you can actually focus on specific areas. You can see here we've got a clash I mean, ideally we'd put a hole in that wall to allow that duct to go through, but for the sake of the project, maybe it was a beam or some part of the structural model that we really needed to address, and that duct had to go under or over or around. So you can pick up those clashes not just by the eye, because this is a small project. We're only focusing on that small bathroom area. Imagine this was a hospital. Imagine all the construction, both structurally, HVAC, everything in one model. You can't go ahead and check every little aspect. So in Revit, we've got a interface check. So we can run two models against each other, for example, the architect's model and the engineer's model, and we can check different aspects. For example, ducts. We can check for the ducts clashing with the walls in this case. You may want to check, for example, the ducts and the structural project and make sure that they're not clashing and there's no interferences. And then Revit automatically, very intelligent, picks up these two models and the elements that you chose and addresses those clashes. It takes you exactly to where it is. Again, imagine this in a hospital project. It'll take you to that pinpoint. You can then address that problem and rerun the test and make sure that there are no clashes. This is something you can't do in 2D documentation. That's why building information modelling is going to be the way of the future, and that starting today with you guys coming to this talk is a great step in your careers. So we'll go on to John now. John's from Wood & Greaves. He's the engineer on the Chilwell project. I think yours is.
Yep.
But he's going to talk about more engineering projects. You can use this, so you can use this.
Yeah. That's fine. G'day. Okay, so I guess I was going to talk a little bit about Wood & Greaves engineers, BIM and Revit experience. I guess I'll start with a little bit about me and Wood & Greaves, where we've come from in BIM and Revit, some case studies and experiences that we've had as a company, and probably some challenges and opportunities that we see going forward for the development of. So, me, John Lucchetti. What do I do? So I run the hydraulic and fire services team at Wood & Greaves. I'm also an associate there. So for anyone who's not familiar with all the different facets of engineering, basically that means I look after all the plumbing systems in a building and all the fire systems like hydrants and sprinklers, and that's what we design. Bit of my background and how I'm involved today. I started my university career here at Deakin and then finished it up at Melbourne Uni, so there's a bit of a local link. I did some study in Warm Ponds. What am I passionate about? I sit on the board of the AHSCA, which is the Consulting Engineering Society for hydraulic engineers, and really passionate about prefabrication and about modular construction. So I guess within Wood & Greaves, that's my little niche that I tend to lead up a lot of our modular projects. What sort of projects have you seen that we might have worked on? So stuff like high residential towers like the Keys, or lower rise big residential developments like 601 Victoria Street, office buildings like the 5-star Green Star building in Footscray, Upper West Side where you got circa 2,000 apartments in a small city block, the Freycinet Resort in Tasmania, which is ultra high end hotel, the VCCC, which is the big hospital going in opposite Melbourne Uni. And the other sort of stuff we've done is the Landing Resort, which is it was a modular project designed, documented, and the modules were built here in Victoria and rolled out to northwest of WA. Bluntstone Arena is a project which we're working on right now. And then below we've got just some imagery of some of the Revit stuff that we've done relating to those projects. So I guess last little bit about us. Wood & Greaves, we're a national company. There's about over 400 of us, and we're operating in just about every state other than South Australia and Tassie, which we service out of Victoria. Sort of things that we do in the engineering space: mechanical, which is HVAC, electrical, lights, power, comms, AV, all that sort of stuff. The hydraulics and fire, which I've spoken about, fire protection, structural engineering, civil, acoustics, property asset management, specialist lighting, and VT, which is lifts and escalators. So, Revit and BIM experience. How significant is Revit as a documentation BIM tool in the industry? It was one of the things I thought about when I was going to give this presentation. Say, well, what's it really meant for Wood and Grieve being involved in this? We started down this process in 2008 on a little job at Melbourne Airport where we were doing a baggage conveyor, and an architect decided to send us this 3D model which we knew nothing about. That's when we started the journey on Revit, and we quickly learnt that it was a fairly steep learning curve. For those in the room that have an architectural base, I guess the architectural side of Revit's always been quite well ahead of the MEP or the engineering side, so we've always sort of struggled to get the technology there to draw the pipes and the ducts and all the structure with the same efficiency that has been there for the architects, but we think now to the point that it's getting fairly advanced. So how much Revit work have we done? Interesting question. Our best guess is we reckon we've done about $2 to $3 billion of total construction value of Revit projects as a business. There's quite a lot of jobs, and quite a lot of the big jobs in the country get done in Revit. It's now becoming a government requirement for most jobs, because what they're looking to do, as was mentioned before, is take that all the way to facility management, where you're going to be able to use this 3D model and this 3D tool to then manage buildings into the future. What's it mean for us as a business? So as I mentioned, we're about 400 staff, or about 420 actually. We have over 60 Revit operators who use Revit day in, day out. So what does a Revit project look like? So I'm going to use 3 examples today. So we're going to look at the NIB Stadium in Perth, the Landing Hotel, which became the Bendigo Hospital Hotel, and the WG office fit-out, which we're doing on Burke Street right this minute. So NIB Stadium in Perth. I'll give you guys a little bit of a walkthrough of what a Revit project looks like, if it plays. So it's a 7,000 seat stadium in Perth, rectangular stadium for rugby and soccer. Cox were the architects and Wood and Grieve were the engineers on the job. So you can see your way having a bit of a walkthrough just how much goes into building a Revit model, and you can see all the services tucked in, coordinated, all around trying to build basically the spatial coordination. What that allows us to do, I guess, is to have, I guess, less variations during construction, tighter coordination in regards to, you know, architects always like to get that extra inch of ceiling space if they can have it. So there's no point in having really big and bulky service zones if that can be better coordinated in 3D before it ever gets to construction. So what you can probably appreciate is just the level of detail and coordination that goes into building one of these things, and just how much coordination happens, and I guess just how much we can save our clients by doing things in a way that basically reduce waste once we get out into site. So it's a little bit of an overview of the stand and just the extent of how much goes into building one of these models. There's literally thousands and thousands of components in one of these. So easy for me to show you a 3D video, but the good thing is this is what it looks like, built and done. And you can see it's pretty close to the Revit images that we showed you. Unfortunately, no one ever takes pretty pictures of the services. It's always the architecture that gets the feature. So next example I wanted to talk about was the Landing Hotel in WA to the Bendigo Hospital Hotel in Victoria. So what was the Landing Hotel? It was a 235-room modular hotel designed and documented in Revit for construction and production in Victoria and delivery installation in the northwest of WA. So we do this work with a company called Hickory. They were unitised builders, and they use Hickory building systems. Basically, I'll show you some images. Basically, what each module looks something like this. It's about the size of a container. Never call them containers. Anyone involved in that industry absolutely despises the term. But this is about the size of them. So what happens? Modular built project, highly coordinated. We've designed it in 3D. You know, all the panos are being done in a factory using lasers. It's really smart, no waste. Well, BHP decides we'll pull $50 million out of the project and it's not going to go ahead anymore. So now you've got a whole heap of boxes landed in Western Australia that you've got nothing to do with. So what do? Well, it's modular construction. Let's redeploy it. Let's put it somewhere else. So where is that somewhere else? Well, we decided that'd be the Bendigo Hospital. So there's a hotel going in there, an Art Series hotel, which is basically the landing hotel redeployed. Guess what's the benefit of Revit? In having that close, I guess, control over the documentation, that high coordination, what we're allowed to do is when we have to redeploy that, it becomes really easy to modify, change, and look at how we can adapt what's been designed in an existing configuration and restack it basically to be something else. So, image-wise, that was the landing hotel. So probably the key features are there. That's with all the architecture switched off. You've basically got really big central hot water plant there. The whole site was planned to be carbon neutral, and big mechanical plant that's feeding down through all this building. Now, I guess the coordination in going from centralised plant through existing modules that are built and have all their ducts installed in the factory is quite an immense task. So one of the unique things about this project was actually having to prefabricate all the services into something before the central plant was ever built and installed, because normally you'd start with one bit and run it through. What did it look like in the factory? A little bit, sorry. Something a little like that. It's a rolling production line that we use there, and basically it's probably a lot more like car manufacturing than it is to traditional construction. That's what it looked like in Revit, with all the services included and all the finishes done. And talking about coordination, that's our architect on the job, Gary Wolfe, and that's sitting in the Wood and Grieve office running through a program called Navisworks, where we exactly what Charmaine was talking about turning on all the clashes in the job and running through one by one, working out all the bits where it didn't work and we needed to change it, as opposed to them happening through RFIs with builders. Oh, got music for this. So this is what it looks like going together. So reasonably impressive stuff, I guess. That project's just about to be finished. We're coming close to the end of it now, so apologies for not having any glamour shots at the end of it, but you can see it's looking a lot like what the Revit model started out to be. And I guess the last one I was going to touch on as a case study is our office fit out. I guess at Wood and Grieve we believe in practicing what we preach, and so when we decided to take up 1,200 square metres in Burke Street, we decided to do the project in Revit, which really shows that right from a small scale to the really big scale, this stuff really works. It has significant savings in the phasing that we use. In this instance, what we've decided to do with our fit out is, because we've got an engineering company, we thought we'd pull the ceilings out and leave everything exposed, because we like looking at that stuff as much as some other people don't. So there's some progress shots of our fit out going in, and what we've done is actually modelled all of the existing services in Revit so that we can actually then connect all the extensions and basically get our fit out done. So the final thing I wanted to touch on was what we see as probably the challenges and the opportunities for Revit going forward. I think one area that needs development will be industry standards. At the moment, everyone's going about Revit in their own different ways. Each architecture firm, each engineering company has their own internal protocols and standards for how we do it. We all think they're pretty good, but I think the industry will benefit from having one set way to do it, that we can each pick up other people's workflows and take off with them. The workflow is really important in Revit, so a lot of time and effort, because you're drawing in 3 dimensions, a lot more information goes into every model that's done in Revit. So one thing we found as a business is it's really important to know how much detail to go to at what time, so you can get the best results and you're avoiding rework. Maintaining model continuity. So one thing that we found also sort of linked to point 2 is if we can have one consistent model throughout the project as opposed to creating dummy models, throwing them away and then creating, so if you have like a DD model where you take it up to sort of 60-70% of design and then you go, okay, now we're going to go full doc, so that was sort of schematic, we'll throw away that whole model and we'll start again. That's really time consuming and really inefficient. So one of the great things is by having robust models with the right information, you can continue that all the way through, and it doesn't just stop at architecture and engineering. It's actually having a model that can then be picked up by the head contractor, and they can manage it through, and they can do their shop drawings, and they can go and do their like their duct takeoffs and their pipe takeoffs from it. Example of that is a project we're working on at the moment. It's Kilmore Hospital. It's another Revit project, and the mechanical contractor, and that's actually picked up all the wood and greave Revit and is using that in their ductwork manufacturing program with their own tweaks to actually produce the ducting for the job. Laser scanning and existing conditions. It's been, I guess, previously thought of maybe it was going to be cost prohibitive, but every day it gets more and more realistic, and there's already guys using it and contractors using it on jobs. It's an opportunity now that we're in this 3D Revit environment to use technology to basically go and scan an existing build. Okay, imagine a really complicated hospital, a really horrible office fit out with any known amount of different pipes, fittings, lights. Even for the architecture in terms of where the walls are, where the columns are, versus some dodgy as-built that might be 30 years old, actually being able to use modern technology to bring that all into a Revit model actually cuts a lot of the mistakes out of the jobs. Pre-cut material lengths is something we've learnt through our modular experience. So in modular, it was really important to cut the fat, cut the waste. It's all about like car design, saying we only want to have as much pipe as we need, and we want to repeat it hundreds of times. What we've realised is through having that design philosophy is that through Revit, through the exacting nature of how we design, that can actually now be applied to conventional jobs. And each piece of material in the job can be known before construction, and you no longer need that plumbers just be running pipe however they see fit on site. You can actually be pre-cutting lengths, pre-cutting bends, prefabricating that, delivering it to site numbered, and installing the job. And what does that mean? That means reduced construction time. Reduced construction time means improved safety, and generally reduced cost. So I guess that couples with point 6, which is prefabricated construction, which is the modular stuff we've spoken about. Another point on the reduced construction time, some of the stuff that we've used, and it's linked with point 10, which is virtual design construction, is actually now we're at a point where we can dummy run through Revit and Navisworks, I guess, looking at actually how we're going to construct the job before anything's ever built. So going, okay, we're going to start the structure, now the mech's going to go in, now the fire sprinklers are going to go in, now the cable trays are going in, now the plumbing's going in, and actually look at the sequencing of the job at a level. So normally, the traditional design process relies on the skill of each designer to be aware of the limitations of being able to install stuff. Now you can actually do it in Revit and actually go, okay, how am I physically going to put that pipe in there if I've built myself out with all that duct? So that's a really good benefit. On cost management, we see QSs will start pulling Revit information into their models to do their cost estimates on jobs. On Bluntstone Arena, we did a detailed bill of materials takeoff of all the pipework in the job and used that to come up with our hydraulic estimate for the cost of the job. So it's a really good way of actually very accurately being able to measure a job and manage the costs. BIM to field, we think, is an exciting technology as well, and that's sort of linked in almost with a bit of augmented reality stuff where you're saying, I'm going to walk around with a Revit model on my iPad and actually do an inspection of a job, and I'll be following the Revit model going, okay, yeah, look, these light fittings, actually, they were meant to be pendants on the design, so we've got fluoros in everywhere. Why has that changed? And you'll be marking it up and making sure that the as-built is going to be, I guess, accurate to what's been designed. So thanks very much for your time. Hopefully that was interesting. Got some contact details there, and I don't know if there's any questions from it, or are we doing them at the end?
No, I think it is case, and I've just realised that on our agenda we copied it from last time, and we only gave you half an hour, and everyone else has got an hour. So, our apologies. Questions now for sure, and any more that you want to go into, feel welcome, because we don't need probably an hour for each of us. And there'll be a presentation by one of our sponsors at some point, but that's okay, Steve, we can pick as well. So perhaps questions from the floor, or even questions to each other about the process, because I think Charmaine was clear at the start that neither of you two actually worked
Correct.
on the project. So have you reviewed back of what, in the case of Third Ecology, how they've modelled and what they've done and things that might have changed along the way to make that a better process? Or is in 3 years has the technology got better?
Oh, the technology has also got better as well as the process. So that project I showed was, from 2011, in 3 years. It's just skyrocketed what we do now. We do much larger projects. We use it for land development, for example, like Lily, doing concepts for that, not just buildings itself. So I think it goes hand in hand. The process, or the technology supports the process, getting faster and quicker. And Jonathan on the head was saying, the ability to prefab parts. I mean, we're in a world now where we consume so much stuff. If we can limit that consumption and have exact lengths of pipe, and we design rooms. I mean, they did it in the old days. It's going back to the grids. They designed rooms and buildings based on the module grids. So if we can adapt that into the BIM process as well, I think they definitely go hand in hand. Yes.
I'm Pratina from Facility Services here at Deakin. I'm keen to know how many sort of end users are actually implementing Revit in their as-built drawings or records to maintain the buildings. Because I know 10 years down the line, if we were to change something with the HVAC, how are we going to keep that amount of detail in the drawings? Because the drawings that we receive, say Revit drawings, is not what we drawings, just what we receive.
Yeah.
So
how does it support facilities
Yeah.
management in the future?
Yeah.
Do you feel like
Yeah. So I guess probably the challenge with that is getting your head contractor on board when they're doing the works to create an as-built model. So I think it's really, really valuable for facilities management. Some clients that we've looked at it with already is like people like the likes of Australia Post and stuff like that. The other guys that love it are also the guys in the oil and gas game. So we did the Gorgon Wheatstone project in WA, where we actually, because the builder didn't have the capability, we actually as-built the entire job for them and built in the FM stuff, or some of the FM stuff for them. The value is having an accurate 3D model now, and so what the perfect process is really, once you get to the end of construction, you have that FM model, that should be handed over to you as the client or to a custodian third party, if that's how you want to play it, to hold on to that model. And then when you're doing ongoing works, that should be continuously updated, and so you have an accurate representation. And I guess the power of it is the stuff you can build into it is stuff like what's the warranty life of the pipework in your building? Like, is it 30 years? Is that what we've got? When do we want to change it out? Do we want to change it out before we have a catastrophic failure over our supercritical area in the data center, or do we think we'll just wait and see till it happens? What's the maintenance intervals on your pumps? Like, having that all in one hub where you can go, you know what? Tell me I need to have someone out every 12 months to service this pump, and the expected life of it's going to be 15 years and we're going to have to change it over. And this is the exact model it is. And in the same piece of information, the exact chiller you've got, the hot water plant you've got, and you have all that information stored in one hub. So I see it as really powerful and a really smart way to do it. And in fact, there's probably a growing market, I think we'll see, especially with the advent of this, like the laser, it's not a new technology, but with the laser scanning becoming more accessible, I think you'll certainly see a lot of people retrospectively going, you know what, we want to know all about our building, go in, give us a Revit model, and then we'll just manage from there on. And so the point about standards, that probably ties in quite closely with that, because saying if we could have a bit more uniformity in the industry, it'd be great for you to have that model and say, oh, you know what, we're going to get Wood and Grieve to do this job, then we're going to get consultant X to, 5 years later, they're doing a bit of work, and they're all feeding into this same model, and you're continuously left with, as a client, an up-to-date record of what you need. And also, imagine all the arguments you have, when you let out work, and you get that standard thing of, latent conditions, right? We didn't know. Who knew that was there? Well, if you actually had an accurate as-built model in Revit 3D, well, that you would know. You would have it there. And so you could potentially avoid a lot of stuff. And, what was the make of that pump? Who supplied it? Well, supply information's there. It's not an O&M manual that was by one FM guy who's sort of retired 5 years ago and took it with him, and So yeah, I think that's the power of it.
Are there other unis that are actually using Revit
As a facility?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of any other unis are. I know
No,
hospitals are.
one of the issues, and I was going to ask John this question, so it's good that you asked it as well, is that the theory of how it works and the potential hasn't quite been met yet by the FM packages that are around. So there are a couple who are around who are new sort of startup FM packages, and things like Archibus, which you guys might have heard about a while, has been around for a long time and has started to get more BIM. And there's some that have started up quite recently that have been only BIM. So Ecodomus and a couple of other ones who are just a fully integrated model system which actually has all that information and sort of how you run it. So there's still a bit of education or a bit of uptake and a bit of, I guess, software development to make sure that the FM systems and the people that are using them can handle that information coming through. So John, with your work, are they required certain systems, or have you heard of them?
No, I'd say similar. We're in the early stages of it. FM's something that's just coming to the forefront, but it's still probably with the challenges in getting that continuity and probably getting the as-built models as well. We're seeing a lot of clients that don't follow it all the way through, so it's all Revit BIM all the way up to tender, and then that same onus isn't put on the contractor to deliver full Revit BIM documentation. So it's like, so I guess we're limiting the potential of it because you have fantastic coordination and detail in your design from your consultants up to the point of tender, and then the contractors are tendering still off 2D drawings for the most part and building off 2D drawings, and that's a real shame. We've had a few jobs where that's happened, and I think it's really looking at going when those big contractors in town, and they're already onto it. I mean, your Lend-Leases, your Grocons, they're onto it already, but it's not fully getting adopted probably for a cost reason, saying, well, we can still, but that will realise the real power of it. It's when you start bringing it all together, because it's sort of like a really great tool, but there's so much power in it that's not used yet, because it's just to the market, I think. Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that on the Gorgon Grass project, Ecodomus was used, and if you guys are wanting to do some searches, we'll send off, I should have mentioned at the start, we'll send back an email after this with some links to the presentations and some links that we might have talked about, so I don't have to be crazy with writing down, as long as I remember. Ecodomus was used on, it is being used on Gorgon Gas. For the Royal Adelaide Hospital, they're using a system called Artra, which is a database compiler. I wouldn't call it an FM system, but it is compiling and sort of soaking up all the information that's coming to them in BIM, and then from that they can plug in other systems. And I don't want to single him out too much, but it's Tim from... here he is, okay. So Tim and I go back a while ago, and they were looking, the City Council were looking exactly at implementing a system that might handle BIM. That's Tim's background inside City Geelong. And they didn't quite get there with that adoption. Now, he might say more later on about where they're up to now, but the idea is some of the municipalities are looking at it very closely, because they manage a lot of buildings, and they often have some pretty skilled people in-house, except for Tim, who can do modelling in GIS and coordination. So they've got a lot of those skills. They just want to put together in some sort of package. Is that?
Any other questions here?
My name is Beata. I'm a construction management student here. What I can't quite grasp is the practicality of accessing the BIM models. Like, we're talking about everyone having access, from the architect, engineers, consultants, the contractors, the quantity surveyors. Does it mean when now we are going to build this building, the subcontractors are going to have access, the building surveyors are going to have access? What's going to be happening there?
Yeah, so the way it normally works at the moment is they're actually different models, and we link into each other's models. So there'll be an architectural model. There'll be, for us, there's two ways you can skin the cat for the services. We can put all of them in one, or we can create actually like an MEH model. And they all linked into each other. So you can still run all your clash detection, all that, but we each own our own model, and then we'll be referencing in the architecture, because obviously, when we produce the services drawings, we're looking for very different things to what the architects are looking for, even from MEH. The way, in terms of moving into construction and the rest of it, basically it's not so much that everyone's accessing it. You're almost handing it over. So you're going through that design process, and then you get into construction. And from the services perspective, normally that's going to get handed over to all the trades, the subcontractors, and they'll then be the custodians of creating their shop drawings and modifying their model into what's going to be the final product. The typical way that we've seen that best run is normally it's the mechanical subcontractor. They're the most advanced in the industry. They would normally take it as the lead services trade, and then they'll manage your electrical and your hydraulic and your fire trades in terms of coordination and running those coordination workshops and making sure they don't clash and it all goes together. So that's all it's sort of like a flow more so than like everyone's jumping at this one model. You've sort of got a bit of a process. Building surveyors I think they're just sort of viewers of the model because they don't change. I won't say they don't do anything because they get into a lot of trouble, but they're not responsible for delivering of anything in the building. So they would provide a report and the information, and then it'd be the responsibility of people like myself and Charmaine to make the necessary changes to comply. Quantity surveyors can probably be the sort of guys that you might issue your model and they pull the information out of their software, or you might go the other way and spit out a bomb and give it to them, depending, because different QSs have different software packages as well.
You control who does what in the model as well. So it's not just like a rainbow fairyland where everyone's working together. There's still limitations and there's still, I guess, controls in place so that I don't go ahead and move something that I'm not supposed to touch and things like that. So it's still controlled, but at least it's all in one virtual space.
That explains.
Leads right into one question. In terms of using QSs for cost planners, and you said they act as custodians and they can view it, etc., and you spit out a BOM, is there cost advice? Is there actual first principle estimating in there that you have numbers, as in dollar figures?
We're playing with it. So internally, we keep a schedule rates on all materials for us, like on a job. And there is an ability to automate it so that you could add to the family's cost property and work it out. It's a little complex in how you do it because Revit sometimes will see a piece of pipe, but to us, 100 mil PVC suspended is completely different from 100 mil PVC 3 metres below ground in a deep trench. So it's got its challenges. I won't profess to say that we don't have a system yet that automates it. It's certainly a challenge that's out there to the smart heads within our business of saying that would be really nice. The question is also with Revit models, sometimes all the detail is not required. So sometimes we will draw the key items that need to be detailed and are really really important for coordination. But then other items, say an apartment project like the 20 mil piping in the ceiling space, is really not that much value necessarily to the end client if we draw that, because it's a 20 mil pipe above a bathroom. It's going to fit. It's going to work. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be coordinated to that level of detail. So then, because you've also got obviously engineers and all sorts of consultants that are tendering against all the other consultants in the industry to win the job. So if you go too crazy with them, too time intensive, you just won't win the jobs because you say, well, it's too expensive. Different story for sort of hospitals, government work. But yeah, we did it for Blundstone. That's how we did our estimate.
As much as it spits out the quantity, with its challenges or without, can you put a dollar figure in it?
Well, to clarify, when Revit was first released, and in fact I'll show it on my screen, there's a dollar figure which is known as an attribute, and it's alongside almost every single component inside Revit. And initially, when I started using Revit and then started to train in Revit and sell Revit, everyone was like, oh, that's fantastic, we'll put all our costs in there and then we can get rid of our QS and we'll have this instant report. Until they figured out that that cost was only as good as the day they put the cost against that chair or item or whatever. It didn't allow for site variations and fluctuations in price, and all the things that a QS knows about that the model doesn't. And so quite quickly people started taking the price out because it wasn't kept up to date. Having said that, if you've got a defined scope, we met with Cotton On earlier today, and hopefully we'll have them present because they're full BIM and are obviously a good success story here in Geelong. They have put costs against items like pallet racking and fixture racking and end sways, and they've got it in 5 different prices because they're dealing in 5 different price countries at the moment. So they have gone that effort, but they've got a defined or a fixed limit of items that they deal with. So the general answer is people wouldn't put pricing into the model that deep or embedded because they just couldn't keep up with the price fluctuations. The fear that some QS, are you a QS background or? Oh, okay. The fear that some QSs had initially was that, oh, this will put me out of business. Well, it did. In the case of Mitchell Brandon, which is a very good firm up in Brisbane, and now expanding, it gave them more business. They're very BIM savvy QSs. They'll take your model, they'll run what they call recipes or price lists against the model and looking for items. They do square areas and all of the things that they would normally do basically in pencil on your CAD plan, they now do automatically. And they feed that back to the architect or the client overnight, and sometimes quicker. So they're actually working quicker and better and then being more involved with the job, as opposed to initially when they thought they might be out of business. And I think BIM's done that to a lot of firms where they thought initially, oh God, this is the end of us. They've actually become smarter and quicker and better and probably more...
To be that smarter and quicker, they've got to know about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
No
the other
doubt.
thing, like there's a big risk, especially with QS, like to do it automatically, I think it is a bit rough because how do you know that BIM model is including everything that needs to be costed? Areas and things, okay, but then there's a huge grey area where the QS gets the BIM model. Is that model correctly? Is that model to the extent that they want the level of detail for the cost analysis? So I guess there's some legal issues in that as well.
Well, in the case of Mitchell Brandman, they provide almost the same service they did when they were in 2D, which was a lot of QAing as opposed to QSing. So they'll look at in the older days, they'll look at a CAD plan and go, well, they've missed this and this is not right, and they'll mark that up and send it back. So they'll perform a QS and a QA. Now they're doing the same thing, but it's in 3D. They say, well, we'll just kind of quick report, and apparently you've got 3 windows in this building. And they go, oh yeah, we put them down as doors, that's right. So they'll quickly do that sort of analysis as well.
Yeah. To answer the start of your question, I think how we did it on Bluntstone was we spat it all out as a schedule and then applied our rates to it manually from that. Yeah, so we just spat out the whole BOM and then we threw our rates on it. I don't think we did it through Revit.
What percentage of suppliers of components are giving you the components as a Revit for the family with the data?
Lots,
Yeah,
none.
much better.
They are. We get lots of different ones, and everyone's at different quality standards of what you get. So some are really good, some won't have connectors on them, some will have really good information, some will have poor information. They're pretty good. I mean, generally, and they're getting better, and pretty much everyone's flogging off that they've got Revit stuff now. Come use us. We've got Revit stuff. So there's a lot of families getting around, but
That's where the industry standard comes in.
that's one of the big issues is continuity in what should be provided. I mean, I probably could show. I don't know if I had the video. Well, one of the things that the next sort of step for us as engineers with Revit is actually building in some of the engineering into it. So we can do thermal modelling out of it. Revit's got a built-in thermal modelling where you can look at the rooms and spaces and do your heat loads and size your AC and do stuff like that. And when we're looking at pipe work and duct work, we can actually look at what's the flow through it, what's the velocity, what's the friction loss through it, and be able to tweak our system and use it as a bit of a QA for even our designs. But it's probably saying if the family that you're connecting to, say the AC unit, if it's a temper zone unit, or it's a Rheem hot water heater or whatever, if it doesn't have that inbuilt engineering into it to tell you that capacity and it's sort of a dumb family like that, then you might not be able to do it. And the problem is if they do it, the guys from Renai might do it the opposite way. And so your internal systems become quite difficult to manage there. So it's there's lots of it. It's just hard. I think our biggest challenge is sifting through it all. And then there's probably an opposite school of thought that says just standardise the families and we'll just nominate them because it's... So there's 2 schools on that one. there's a whole industry around it probably.
I think at the point about the analysis and looking at the effect on the building envelope is probably a great time to swap over to Sapphira. That's great. Is that good?
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect timing, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thanks for going longer.